call this meeting of the City Council to order. Have any citizen or public comments tonight, if anyone? If not, just welcome everybody to tonight's meeting, and we'll proceed with the approval of the agenda.
So move.
Second.
Motion is second. Clerk, call the roll, or what do I call you, Jenny?
Deputy Clerk.
District Deputy.
District Deputy Clerk.
Assistant to the...
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Motion passed. Consideration of the approval of the minutes of January 10th, 11th, 15th, 18th, and 22nd. Do you want to just consider all these together, or do you want to take those individually?
My move would take all of them.
Right? Is there a second?
Second.
Clerk will call the roll.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Next on the agenda is the approval of the consent calendar. Does anybody have any questions on the consent calendar of anything?
So move.
Second.
Moved and second to approve the consent calendar. Clerk will call the roll.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Consent calendar is approved. Business of the mayor. I just have a few things. First of all, I wanted to congratulate Thomas. He won an award at the Iowa Newspaper Association for a press photo. So congratulations, first place award. So very nice.
Pretty good.
And the other thing I did last week on Friday, I was at the IC school. We didn't get a chance to approve a proclamation ahead of time, but it was Catholic Schools Week, and so they had a proclamation for Catholic Schools Week, which I read at their assembly last week, and had a nice assembly, and I had an enjoyable time there. So.
Good. Tom, your photo wasn't of the city council, was it?
No, unfortunately.
Oh.
That would have cost him
It's
points.
hard to say. There's a fire that's being put out, so...
Yeah, it might have been.
Might have been.
Oh, it could have been. You didn't recognize it.
There's like a lot of smoke and mirrors, too, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a good chance.
All right. I do have some appointments to some of the commissions. I'm assuming you probably want to just take all these as one also, but it's reappointing Keisha Cunnings and Chuck Lemaster to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Keisha just came on just recently as a replacement for someone who went off, or who...
He died.
For who?
He died, didn't he?
No, it was just like in the last month or two. She took somebody's place. Anyway. And then reappointing Laura Wallace and Jeff Sisson and Carol Fry to the Historic Preservation Commission. They're all reappointments. They've all been on before and all expressed an interest to stay on that commission. They have a lot of things going on right now. And then appointing Jim Erb to the Upper Cedar Watershed Management Improvement Authority. And once again, Jim has been on this, or served on this authority before, and would like to continue on. He's done a lot of things in the water improvement area, so he would like to continue in those veins. So ask for a motion to approve those appointments.
I'd so move with our thanks for their willingness to be involved.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
All those appointments are approved. Next up is a public hearing on the 2018 sanitary sewer lining project. I'd open the hearing. So we have a filing of affidavit,
Yes, Your Honor.
and we have any written comments or objections?
I have none, Your Honor.
Anyone else have any written oral comments? Or
Move to
Yeah.
close the hearing.
Second.
You got it, didn't you?
No, I got it.
We got it.
Yeah. We've had a motion to close the hearing. Hearing no comments. Clerk will call the roll.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
The hearing is closed. Next, we'll consider Resolution 1118, which is approving the final plans for this project. John?
Yes, the City Council approved the preliminary plans and specifications for this project at the January 2nd meeting. Now, the 2018 sanitary sewer lining project, that's a continuation of a program that we use to rebuild sanitary sewer lines to limit inflow and infiltration into the system, and lining allows us to do that without having to excavate and remove and replace pavement. Now, this year's project will involve lining approximately 8,000 lineal feet, and this is all either on 16th Avenue or north of 16th Avenue and on both sides of North Grand. Now, there was one addendum issued during the bidding phase, and this clarified the bid letting date for the bidders. So the final construction documents do match the previously approved preliminary plans. So I would recommend approval of Resolution 1118, approving the final plans and specifications for the sanitary sewer lining project.
What's your estimate on that, John?
The estimate on the project? The estimate was $175,000.
Any further discussion, questions?
So move.
Second.
A motion second to approve Resolution 1118. Clerk will call the roll.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Next, we consider Resolution 1218, which is awarding the contract for such project.
Yes. Well, last Thursday, February 1st, we opened bids. We received 5 bids for the project, and the following bids were received. The low bidder was HydroClean. They're located out of Des Moines at $172,356,000. Second bidder, VisuSewer at $175,350. Municipal Pipe and Tool out of Hudson, they submitted the third bid at a little over $177,000. In situ form, they submitted a bid of $190,565. And Lamenti and Sons out of Hugo, Minnesota, they submitted the high bid at $212,900. Now, our cost opinion for the project was $175,000. HydroClean, they're located in Des Moines, and we've successfully worked with them on a number of other projects. They were the general contractor for last year's lining project, as well as they've done a number of manhole rehab projects for us. So I would recommend Resolution 1218 awarding the project to HydroClean.
Haven't 4 of those companies done business with us in the past? Or for us?
Actually, yes. Lamenti and Sons, they were a new bidder.
I was going to say
Yeah.
that somebody new.
But all 4 of those have done work for us.
We've had satisfactory work out of HydroClean in the past, from what I can remember.
Yes.
I'd move to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion or questions for John? Not, clerk will call the roll.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Motion approved. Next up is a public hearing on the 2018 Charlie Western Trail Bridge demolition project. We'd open the hearing. We have a filing of affidavit of publication.
Yes, Your Honor.
Any written comments or objections?
I have none, Your Honor.
Any oral comments or objections tonight?
Move to close.
Second.
Motion to close the hearing. Clerk will call the roll.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Motion passes. We'll now consider Resolution 1318, which is approving the final plans for such demolition project.
Yes. Well, the City Council approved preliminary plans and specifications for this project on January 2nd, as well as authorized taking bids. Now, the project, as we've discussed previously, it'll include taking down the entire structure. The abutments, as well as the piers, will be removed to approximately 1 foot below the ground level or stream bed elevation. The demolished concrete from the bridge is going to be hauled and stockpiled at the Shaw Avenue site. So, during the bidding process, 2 addendums were issued. The first addendum provided some additional explanation on how the contractor could gain access to the bridge site on the west side of the river. And the second addendum actually added a bid item to the project. The usable concrete will be stockpiled for later use. Any unusable or undesirable concrete, we added a bid item for the contractor to dispose of that right away, and we'll pay for that by a cubic yard basis. Both addendums were minor and did not change the scope of the project, so the final plans do essentially match the previously approved preliminary plans and specifications. So I'd recommend approval of Resolution 1318, approving the final plans and specifications for the project.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Not, clerk call the roll.
Hammond,
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next is consideration of Resolution 1418, which is awarding the contract for the bridge demolition.
Yes, bids were opened last Monday, January 29th, and we received 8 bids for this project. Lodge Construction out of Clarksville, they submitted the low bid at $267,910.40. Kramer and Associates out of Grimes, they were second at $283,700. Pop Excavating out of Osage, they submitted a bid at a little over $334,500. Vite Construction out of Rogers, Minnesota, submitted a bid a little over $444,000. Peterson Contractors out of Rhinebeck, they were a little over $500,000. Boulder Construction out of Grundy Center, and Minowa Construction out of Harmony, Minnesota, both submitted bids of a little over $533,000. And the contractor out of Johnston, Iowa, United Construction, they submitted a high bid at almost $553,700. Now, the engineer's opinion on probable cost was $400,000. Now, Lodge Construction, they are from the area. They're located in Clarksville. They've done this type of work. They've done bridge demolition work before, and they will, before the construction contract is approved, they will have to submit a performance bond for 100% of the amount of the project. So I would recommend approval of Resolution 1418, awarding the bid to Lodge Construction.
I didn't ask this when we talked about 1318 because you answered it the last time, but what was the estimate on this?
The estimate was $400,000.
Is that right?
They said they've done bridge removals in the past. What kind? I mean, is it, what kind of bridge is similar to this type? 'Cause each bridge is a little bit different, but
Yeah, actually, there's not that many, filled arch bridges
Yeah, but
left
I mean,
anymore. But they've like beam bridges, concrete slab bridges, and they've done work for the DOT.
okay.
Yeah.
They've never done work for the city before, have they, John?
No.
Okay.
And also the president of the company, Steve Lodge, he has experience through, he was with Peterson Contractors on their demolition crew.
Okay. How is this going to be funded? Where's the money coming from to pay for this?
I think ultimately we're going to be using some one-day borrowing funds that we've accrued for nuisance, and perhaps using the balance from a mixture of general fund and road use tax.
Okay. Any concern that, the 2 lower bids are that far under the estimate?
Quite various.
No, because, and I talked to Calhoun Burns, Kramer and Associates, they actually just finished a bridge removal project in Des Moines over the Des Moines River, a older concrete arch-filled bridge. So they're right there with Lodge. And in fact, we would have had 9 bids. There was a contractor out of central Iowa that talked to me a couple of times. He made a couple of visits, and he actually submitted a bid on the day of the letting, but he was a little cold feet or something. He actually, before the bids were opened, he withdrew the bid, and he told me later that his bid was at $296,400. So, you know, there's 3 bids right there, fairly close together.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, just when there's that big of a variance, it just makes me wonder a little bit. So.
Yeah, if they were alone, yes, but since they're, you know, we have others right there together, and also because of the performance bond requirement, they're going to have a surety company behind them.
Okay. And all the DOT permitting and stuff like that they'll have to do, or will that be up to the city to get all of that done?
DNR, I think what you mean.
Well, the Corps.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Well, we do have the permits in already. We've
In place.
obtained those. They'll have to abide by those permits.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we don't have to pay for the removal of the wood turtles?
But we
No,
have to leave
'cause
those
they
alone.
stay.
They're sleeping right now.
I would so move.
Second.
Any further discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Motion passes. John, do they have a starting date at all?
Well, they can't be in the, let's see, the water has to be above like 50 degrees, and so they have to, they're going to probably start right away because they actually have to remove trees beforehand, but then they can't get in the Cedar River until after March 1st, and there's some air temperature and water temperature requirements, and that's all because of the you know, wood turtle avoidance plan.
All right, thank you. Next up on the agenda is a public hearing for the First Avenue Bridge Improvement Project. We'll open the hearing for that project. We have a filing of affidavit of publication.
Yes, Your Honor.
Any written or comments or objections?
I have none, Your Honor.
How about any oral comments or objections?
So move to close.
Second.
Clerk will call the roll.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Next up then is the consideration of Resolution 1518, which is approving the final plans for the bridge improvement project.
Okay, this project was also approved at the January 2nd meeting. And this is the improvements on the First Avenue Bridge. It's the bridge over the Charlie Western Trail up by the high school and middle school. On this bridge we have some areas of decking that's starting to delaminate. And what we'll do is remove these areas, these patched areas that are failing. We'll also mill the entire surface and put on a new driving surface. In addition to the work on the bridge deck, we'll also add a bridge or a railing between or on the sidewalk to separate the pedestrians from the roadway traffic. Also on the edge of the sidewalk, the old railing will be removed and a 5-foot high chain link fence will be added. Now, no addendums were issued during the bidding process, so the final plans do match the previously approved preliminary plans and specifications. So I'd recommend approval of Resolution 1518, approving the final plans and specifications for the project.
Any questions for John?
Cost estimate?
The cost opinion on this project was $268,000.
So move for 1518.
Second.
Motion is second. Clerk will call the roll.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Next up is consideration of Resolution 1618, which is awarding the contract for this project.
Yeah, well, last Monday, we had the letting on this project as well, and we received 7 bids on this project. Wicks Construction out of Decorah, they submitted the low bid, $214,932.74. The second bidder was Jasper Construction out of Newton. They were at $228,500. PCI Roads out of St. Michael's, Minnesota. They submitted a bid of just a little over $259,000. Hawkeye Paving out of Bettendorf. They were at $263,600. Kramer and Associates out of Grimes submitted a bid of $270,673. Boulder Construction out of Grundy Center, they were just a little over $279,000. The high bid was from Minturn Incorporated out of Brooklyn, and they submitted a bid of just under $357,000. As I mentioned, the engineer's opinion of probable cost was at $268,000. Now, Wicks Construction out of Decorah, we've worked with them before. Most recently, they were the general contractor on both the permeable paving projects, the one in 2010 and the second one in 2012. So I'd recommend approval of Resolution 1618 awarding the bid to Wicks Construction.
I guess, and where's the funding for this one coming from? John or Steve?
This is a local option sales tax.
Okay. The whole thing?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
And this construction will be non-school time.
Yes, they can't start until in June, and they have to be done in August, but I checked with the school on the dates.
Any further questions?
So move. Approval of the award.
Second.
Clerk will call the roll.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Molero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Motion approved. Next on the item, we have the a motion to accept the fiscal year 2017 audit report, but we probably better hear the report first before we have a motion to approve it. So we have a Representative Gardner Thompson here with us, so
I'm Elizabeth Thayer, and I am the governmental partner for Gardner Thompson.
lift your microphone up a little bit. Thank you. Maybe.
Maybe. We'll see. Okay. I guess to get started, we'll start with the Independent Auditor's Report, which is on page 2. It's on Gardner Thompson letterhead. And this letter just goes ahead and lays out what management's responsibility and the auditor's responsibility for the financial statements are. Again, an audit is not designed to find fraud or errors or irregularity. The purpose of an audit is to determine whether or not financial statements are fairly presented. And so this letter lays out that explanation and also gives our opinion on the financial statements. And for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2017, we have issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, which means it's a clean opinion. That's what you want to hear. So we've gone ahead, and this letter just goes ahead and describes that, we base it on tests and samples. We're not looking on every single transaction, and that we have issued an unmodified opinion. On page 5 starts management's discussion and analysis, and this is just a few pages that Trudy goes ahead and submits some information to, and it's good comparison. It's looking at fiscal 17 as compared to fiscal 16 so that you can see them side by side. She also provides some information as far as what went into the budget and the thoughts for the budget amendments, and then also there's a section in this for the economic factors that were considered when you were looking into fiscal 2018's budget. I do want to stop, though, on page 9 of this, where it talks about the debt administration. And we, as part of the audit, we calculate what the debt limit is for the city for each year. And then we go ahead and we compare the debt limit to what the city has for outstanding debt at June 30. And this year, the debt limit is $18,559,892, which you can see in the report. And then the applicable debt that goes against that is down from last year, which is a good thing. And the applicable debt against the debt limit is just a little over $5 million. So when you look at that, right now the city of Charles City was sitting at about 27% of the debt limit at June 30th. The recommended maximum is 65% for a governmental entity, so you're well within those guidelines.
Is that about normal for the entities that you've looked at?
It is. And it fluctuates greatly based on the size of the entity and, their capacity to go ahead and issue the debt also. But
What they've got going on?
exactly what they have for projects. A lot of it is timing, too. The timing of the different projects and if they are going to be funded by debt or if they are able to apply for grants also.
Sure.
That makes a big difference. Okay, the actual financial statements then start on page 11. And again, the city is cash basis, so we do not see any capital assets or long-term debt on the actual financial statements themselves. We do talk about them in management's discussion and analysis. We do talk about them in the notes to financial statements, but you don't actually see the capital assets or the related debt on the actual financial statements themselves. We're presenting cash in and cash out. So Exhibit A shows the cash basis statement of activities and net position. It shows both the governmental funds and the business type activities, which are going to be your water and your sewer. And as you can see, the city had a healthy year as the change in cash basis net position increased, almost $900,000 for the governmental activities and about $1.8 million for the business type. And one of the main reasons for the large increase in the business type is because there were bond proceeds that play into that. And the bond proceeds from this fiscal year were $1,466,299. Okay, the next page, page 13 and 14. This shows the statement of cash receipts, disbursements, and changes in cash balances for just the governmental funds during the year. And I want to bring your attention to that first column for the general. That first column does not just include the general basic fund. There are several funds that are combined together to be reported as general, and those include your petty cash, your police dispatch, park and rec, hotel, motel, just to name a few. So when you're looking at that balance, that ending $2 million balance, that includes all of those funds. Something else we look at as part of our analytical procedures for the audit is we look at the ending balance as a percentage of disbursements for the year. And this has been a steady increase for the last couple of years. And I know it's something we've talked about at prior council meetings. And if you look at just the general fund, which is not presented here, but if you isolate just that general fund, we're up about 58% this year. If you look at it as presented, it's about 56%. And that, again, the ratio is ending balance to disbursements. So that's been creeping up. So that might be something you want to address when you're doing your budget meetings in the near future. Okay, on Exhibit D, which is page 16 and 17, shows the statement of cash receipts, disbursements, and changes in cash balances for the proprietary funds. And again, the main thing that happened here was the $1.4 million worth of debt that was issued during the year. So that accounts for the majority of the change in that balance. So, any questions so far? Okay, the notes to the financial statements then start on page 19, and this lays out all of the summary of significant accounting policies and procedures. It talks about how revenues and expenses are recognized in the financial statements. It also gives additional information on the debt issuances. It provides amortization schedules for those. It also talks about the pension plan and the net pension liability that is not reported on the financial statements, but is just a footnote disclosure that is in regards to the IPERS pension liability. And the state auditor's office goes in and works with IPERS, and they calculate the city's proportionate share of the net pension liability every year, and they provide us with that information to include in this audit report. So there's about 4 or 5 pages of that. Municipal fire and police retirement systems do the same thing. Again, they're audited by an outside entity, and they provide us with the information to be included in your report. We also have notes detailing interfund transfers, your health care plan, insurance. Something new this year, we're required to implement GASB Statement Number 77 for this fiscal year, and it talks about tax abatements and TIF, which is something that the City of Charles City has used extensively in the past. And so this year, with the help of the Department of Management, Trudy was to go in and calculate the TIF effect for not only the city, but for the county and the school. So when you look at the county audit reports and when you look at the school audit reports, you're going to be able to see this year what the effect of the TIF is on those entities. So they will go ahead and they will have a schedule then in their respective audit reports that says exactly how much property tax was diverted because the TIF was in place. So that was something new for this year.
Will those entities also have similar lines in their audits then to show what they're doing as far as TIF?
Yep, they sure will.
How it impacts the
Yep.
city then? Okay.
Yeah, they're trying to make everything a little bit more clear
Okay.
and have it presented. It doesn't show up anywhere in the financial statements again, it's just a disclosure, but it's trying to show entities the true effect of what is really happening when you're utilizing that tax increment financing. So. Okay, the next place that I'd like to stop is on page 39 and 40, and that's the budgetary comparison schedule of receipts and disbursements. And with this schedule, we present the original budget and the final amended budget at the end of the fiscal year. And then we go ahead and we show the final to total variances. Now, for this schedule, the main focus is on the disbursements, and you want to make sure that your disbursements haven't exceeded the amounts budgeted during the year. And as you can see, for all the disbursement line items, they were a positive variance. That's what you want to see. Now, at the top with the receipts, there are a couple large variances, and Trudy had an error when she compiled the budget amendment, and she had a line flipped. So that accounts for the $1 million variance on the negative and on the positive for when you see the variances between the intergovernmental and the charges for service. It was just a data entry error. So that is the majority of that particular variance. Okay, following that we have notes to other information. We also have some more information about the IPERS net pension liability and the Municipal Fire and Police Retirement System of Iowa's pension liability. It shows the trends for the last 3 years as far as what the city's proportionate share was and how well funded each of those entities were. There's also a schedule in there that details out the total contributions for both of those entities for the last 10 years. And then some more actuarial information. The page 46 starts the schedule of cash receipts, disbursements, and changes in cash balances for the non-major governmental funds. And this is all the little governmental funds that get aggregated together and presented in the front of the financial statements. It just gives some more information and some more detail for those smaller funds. And the same goes for the non-major proprietary funds, and that's on page 51. And then on page 52 and 53, we start with the schedule of indebtedness, which details out each of the county's debt issuances and what the activity was for that fiscal year. And then Schedule 4 shows the amortization schedules for each of the issuances, and it goes and it shows the interest rates and the principal that's going to be due for each of those years. Schedule 5 is on page 58 and 59, and this is just a 10-year comparison of the receipts and the disbursements from the different functions. So again, you can do some analyticals there. Page 60 is schedule number 6, the expenditures of federal awards. And this year, the City of Charles City expended $1.5 million in federal awards. And the threshold for being required to have a single audit is $750,000 of federal expenditures. So the city always seems to hit that mark, and so there was a single audit performed for this fiscal year. The major program was the Section 8 Housing Choice vouchers, and there was $707,000 worth of disbursements during the fiscal year for that. Okay, everybody's favorite part, the findings. On page 62 and 63 is our first letter about the internal control over financial reporting. And this just again talks about how our audit is based on tests and samples. We're not looking at every transaction. It also talks about how we come in and we assess internal control as part of the audit too, to determine if the record keeping is segregated from the custody. And we try to make improvements and make suggestions if we see something that the city might be able to do something a little bit differently. Here, the internal control appears to be very good. The council is involved with the day-to-day. You're looking at the financial statements, you're asking questions, and that's a big key to having a successful system of internal control. So this letter just kind of describes the processes that we use to go ahead and assess that control. The next letter on page 64 has to do with federal programs. Again, because it was a single audit, we're required to do additional procedures, and those procedures have gotten very in-depth. The single audit has become a very, very important part. The federal government has really been cracking down on the single audit portion of these audits. They're looking to make sure that the compliance requirements are being tested and that the documentation is appropriate and complete and thorough. So with the amount of dollars that the city spends, they're federal dollars, again $1.5 million, this becomes a very important piece. And this just details out, again, that we're assessing, we're looking at the internal controls, and then we're testing for compliance. And then we go ahead and we'll report on those findings as well. So page 66 details the findings. And again, the Section 8 Housing Choice Vouchers were the major program. The first finding that we have is in regards to segregation of duties, which we've already touched on that a little bit. That's in every single audit report that we issue, just the way the local governments are structured in Iowa. You don't have 50 people in your office to be able to segregate things entirely. So therefore, I'm required to put this comment in, and then we talk extensively about going ahead and keeping those controls as segregated as possible. The second finding is on page 57, and it's preparation of full disclosure financial statements. And again, this is a finding that is in the majority of the reports that we issue. Just because you don't have a CPA on staff that is able to go ahead and prepare all of these financial statements and related footnote disclosures for external reporting. So because my firm assists in the preparation of those financial statements, that I'm required to put this particular finding in the report. Okay, the next piece of this, part 3, the findings and question costs for federal awards. I'm happy to say that after the extensive test work for the single audit, we had no findings. So Heidi is doing a fantastic job in the documentation, everything that we looked at, all of the testing, and again, that's based on tests and samples also, but the items that we selected for sampling, everything was as it needed to be. So. Now page 68 starts the other findings related to required statutory reporting, and the State Auditor's Office gives us a compliance guide every year with different code sections that they want us to test the compliance. And we usually look at the budget, we look at board minutes to make sure that they're being published properly and so on. And so certified budget, the questionable disbursements, travel expense, and business transactions, everything that we tested was in compliance. Now for the business transactions, the Code of Iowa has dictated that the threshold for a potential conflict of interest is $1,500. So we put in all of the related party transactions, and then we talk about the ones that are over $1,500. And as long as the related party is not participating in the acquisition of services, or if they're competitively bid, then you're within the requirements by the code, and this just becomes a disclosure. And I'm happy to say that all of the related party transactions here were entered into properly, so this is just a transparency disclosure. There's no finding to go along with that. On page 69, again, bond coverage was in compliance, council minutes were in compliance, deposits and investments were okay. There are some excessive fund balances, which again, we go through with these with Trudy every year, and a lot of them it's just a matter of, you're saving for a project. So like with your road use tax and your local option sales tax, you're looking to have a project in the future, so you're accumulating those dollars, so when you're ready to do the project, you have the money. The ones that are concerning are the tax increment financing, and we have a comment on page 70 in regards to tax increment financing also. The county auditor prepares a reconciliation every year and compares the TIF debt that has been certified to the county auditor to the TIF payments that have been received by the county. And this has been a negative for the last couple of years. And I know this is a project that Trudy and Steve have been working on with Gloria and Sandy. And so I'm hoping that they are close to having a resolution on it. I hope.
We're getting closer.
Oh, I hope so. But again, this particular comment will show up in the Floyd County's audit report also, since they are the ones making that calculation too. So Also on page 70, we had a couple financial condition. There were a couple funds that were negative at the end of the year, but again, usually that's just a timing thing. You're making the expenditures, and then, most grants are reimbursement basis, so you have to make the expenditure to be able to apply for the reimbursement. So, or you're completing a project with the anticipated receipt of special assessments to pay for that project. So there wasn't anything out of the ordinary with that particular comment. The last comment in the report is the annual financial report. And this year, the annual financial report that's required to be submitted to the State Auditor's Office was not submitted by the December 1st deadline. It was not submitted until December 8th. So that means it was also not published as required, because the code actually requires that particular report to be published in the paper by December 1st too, and Trudy didn't have that completed until a little bit later.
In order for that to be published, you have to receive information from us, or what was the problem on that?
For this report, yes. Part of our audit procedures are to determine whether or not the report that is actually published reconciles back to what are on the city's financial statements for the fiscal year. Also, we're required to obtain proof of that publication to go ahead and be able to make those determinations. And we did not receive that information until after she'd submitted her report, which was the middle of December. And then also there was some further TIF information and some tax abatement information that wasn't received until December 28th either. So that delayed our processes a little bit. Anybody have any questions or concerns?
That was the last page.
Yeah.
I don't see any questions, but I think you've covered that very well, so we appreciate that. And it sounds like from the comments you made, our staff has done a pretty good job of keeping our city in good financial shape and recording, and for the most part, so we commend our staff for that, and also thank you for all the work you did on doing this audit for us. So
Yep, it's a pleasure to come and audit here, because everybody is very knowledgeable and helpful, and it's much appreciated. So yeah.
thank you.
And I guess if you ever have questions or concerns, that Gardner doesn't just come in and audit. We're available the whole year for questions and concerns. We would rather have you call and ask and do it the right way than to have problems down the line. So yeah, we're always available.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Well, then I guess the next step was to have a motion to approve the audit report you just heard.
So move.
Second.
Any further comments or questions? Not, well, Kirk will call the roll.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
All right.
Friesman.
Aye.
Motion approved. Next is Resolution 1718, which is approving the plans and specs and setting a date for a public hearing for the Riverside, Illinois Street Reconstruction Project. And John, I suppose you're up again.
Yes. Well, this resolution approves the preliminary plans and specifications for the Riverside Drive, Illinois Street Reconstruction Project. It sets February 28th at 2 p.m. as the bid date and time for the project. Also, the public hearing for the project will be held at 6 p.m. on March 5th. SEH engineers, they've prepared the plans and specifications for this street project, and I've prepared the contract documents, the project manual for the bidding package. Now, to summarize the street reconstruction project, it's a complete reconstruction. The existing pavement will be removed, and new 7-inch concrete paving with curb and gutter will be constructed. This will be on Riverside Drive, starting at Joslin, continuing around to Illinois Street, and Illinois Street up to Kelly Street. It'll be wide enough so we'll have some on-street parking at Victory Park. And what we're going to do is also realign the intersection of Riverside and Illinois slightly to move it to the northeast to get it out of the floodway. We'll be able to raise the street to get it up higher so it isn't always flooded. And this will also provide better drainage from that area, and help maximize the life of the pavement. Now, the contract completion date is set for September 1st, so this project will occur this summer. So I'd recommend approval of Resolution 1718, setting the letting and hearing dates and authorizing the city clerk to publish the public notice.
Any questions?
We
John?
talked about this at our study session, so I'd move.
Second?
John, does this contract also include the work on the property there on the corner as far as replacing part of the structure that's there, moving it and replacing it?
The wall?
Right.
Yes, the
Okay.
wall, we're working with Nettletons on that. And our contract, this project will include removing and rebuilding that wall along with the gate that's there.
Okay. So,
Are we obtaining that, some property there, or are we getting an easement on it?
It'll be deeded, it'll be right away.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll own some more, okay.
Any further discussion, questions? None, clerk will call the roll.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Good.
I think this will be a good project, especially raising that road. It'll be nice to get that so it's not always flooded down there. It seems
Yeah.
like you get any rain, that's always a flooded area, so this will be a good project, I think, so. Next is consideration of Resolution 1818, which is approving contract with GHD for monitoring and maintenance for the Shaw Avenue dump site.
Yep, so it's that time of year where we're looking to renew our agreement with our monitoring firm. Used to be Conestoga Rover. A few years ago, they were bought out by GHD, and so GHD has been performing all the routine monitoring and maintenance on the Superfund site out there, Shaw Avenue Dump. We're coming off of the 5-year review from EPA that required some additional testing and whatnot that we've worked with Zoetis. So that's kind of above and beyond and separate from this. This is just the annual monitoring and maintenance of the wells out there. So with that, we're looking at an annual cost, which is the same as last year, $14,850. We share that 50-50 with Zoetis, so then our share is $7,425. We fund that through the general fund ultimately, and Zoetis has approved their portion of the contract to date, just FYI, I guess I could say.
Steve, did you tell us a while back that there's possibility of kind of closing out some of those wells out there?
Yeah, the DNR is looking, wants to work towards that, removing of some wells, and some of that will take some initial study work on our end, maybe changing of some city code and whatnot. So that would be something that's, some of that will get included with some of these normal costs, but we might have a little extra that would be on top of that. I don't know what that would be or how many wells we're talking about. But we do have some funds set aside from our one-day borrow that we borrowed in anticipation of that EPA review that we ultimately didn't need. So we have some funding available to do some of that depending on what that ultimately ends up being. But GHG would certainly be involved in that process.
Do we know when that might come up?
The ball's in our court to kind of take that forward. So I don't have a definite timeline for that, but I think here within this next fiscal year 19 we'll be able to see some progress with that.
Okay.
Some of the things we've already have addressed, like within our city code, you can't have a private well on your property unless it's used for gardening, and just you can't potable water. So it's things like that you just have to kind of affirm that you have in your code, and so we'll be working through that.
Okay. It just seems like a good thing to
Yes.
work towards, and hopefully it cuts down on this cost eventually.
Right. Yep.
I'd so move.
Second.
Any further discussion? None, clerk call the roll.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Motion passes. We will now consider Resolution 1918, which is approving the purchase of a swimming pool heater.
Yeah,
Steve?
the pool out at the Lionsfield swimming pool is starting to fail on us. It's backfiring more. It's still functional. We're not sure how much longer it is going to remain functional. So in fiscal year 18, we budgeted about $12,000. A couple of months ago, Steve Lindeman realized that the price is going to probably be closer to 16. We got some quotes back, and we're about right in the middle of those two numbers, pretty much. We got 4 quotes back, and the low one being from McGage Plumbing and Heating for $14,538. That'll purchase the new heater, install it, remove the old one, and dispose of it. And so we would like to approve that low quote to McGage for $14,538.
Will that be done before this swimming season then, Steve?
It would be.
And we've got that budgeted. I'd move for it.
Second.
Moved and seconded for Resolution 1918. Clerk will call the roll.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Star.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Next, we have the first reading of Ordinance 1113, amending sections of 105.02 definitions and 105.10 waste storage containers of the Charles City Code of Ordinances for the purpose of modifying the requirements for the disposal of residential solid waste and recyclable materials. That's a mouthful. We'll have you explain that.
Well, yeah. Now we're basically in the final stages of putting into place our switch from bags to totes. So what you see here is a change in our garbage ordinance that makes that change to include the 35, 65, and 95 gallon totes. It cleans up some language in terms of definition of residential waste and rubbish that we'd come across, and it also puts in language that we talked about in our workshop as far as separation of the totes when they get put out. To try and have that 4-foot separation. Also to have we want to try and encourage people not to have their totes and bags sitting out at the curb all the time. So there's a provision in there that allows people to put their garbage and recycling out up to 24 hours in advance of the pickup day and bring it back in within 24 hours afterwards. The thought would be to, if we have habitual offenders that continually leave their things out at the curb, those are the issues we want to address. I think there's a few spots in town that haven't seen a day of sunlight in their entire life, so we want to try and address that with this change over here. So that's why we've included that in that as well. Obviously, the weight restrictions on the bags and the bags themselves still stay in the agreement because, as you have a full container, you can still buy bags and use those as you'd like. But basically, it addresses how we're going to implement what we've been talking about for the last few months. So,
Any questions for Steve?
Let's just clean up, I guess, excuse the pun, but just clean up the ordinance to get it ready to go. I'd so move.
Second.
Nothing's really changed since we've initiated discussions on this. Is there, Steve?
Nope, everything's been moving forward as we've discussed.
A motion and a second for first reading of Ordinance 1113. Clerk will call the roll.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Star. Yeager.
Aye.
Motion passes, and we'll have the first reading of Ordinance 1113.
Ordinance number 1113, an ordinance amending subsection 105.02 definitions and 105.10 waste storage containers of the Charles City Code of Ordinances for the purpose of modifying the requirements for the disposal of residential solid waste and recyclable materials.
Thank you, Mike. All right, other business, do we have any correspondence tonight? Jenny?
I don't have any.
Brad, any attorney's report tonight?
None, Your Honor.
City clerk's report?
I have not one.
City administrator's report?
Just a couple things, and the first thing I wanted to mention, we got our dividend reimbursement check from EMC Insurance. We typically get that this time each year, as far as, you know, depending on how the overall group is doing in terms of performance. And last year we got a refund of $18,414, $14,000 the year before, $13,000 the year before that. This year our refund was just under $31,000.
Holy cow.
So very nice dividend check in that regard, and the best one we've had.
So they overcharged us 31,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to question more money, but is it, you know, return to work policy? Is there anything that you can kind of...
I'm thinking it's the return. It's got to be the return to work policy.
Okay. Again, I'm not arguing. I appreciate it, but it's always nice to know, and something we're doing is working to help not only get more money back to the city, but to help our employees that's serving its purpose.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's not just us. It's what everybody within, you know, the
absolutely. But
insureds are
we're kind
doing.
of one piece into that puzzle.
Yeah, you know, for as far as risk management and all those type of things. So, you know, it's something we certainly don't count on each year, because you don't know how much it's going to be. But it's nice to see that one up a little bit this year. Another thing I wanted to mention is the city we recently applied for a new grant. This last Friday. It came up kind of quick, so we haven't really had a chance to talk about it. But it's called the Iowa Partners for Conservation, and it's a USDA grant that it's working in concert with all the various water quality projects that we've got going on. This would be a grant that would actually fund a staff person to help oversee the Upper Cedar Watershed Management Authority, which is something they've been trying to get, you know, funding to oversee that for a number of years. So this person would help oversee that. They would also help oversee the RCPP program that we're doing, as well as the sponsored project that we'll have upcoming here too. So this is going to be something that's going to be very handy to have somebody to be able to dedicate to those projects. And our contribution in this is basically some payment in kind of our time to the tune of about $2,000 worth each year, so not much of anything. So we worked with some of the usual suspects. The DNR and Iowa Soybean Association helped craft this grant along with myself, and we put that in on the 31st. So it was put in last Wednesday. So we should hear in the next couple months as far as whether that gets funded. And if so, that position would then be hired sometime in the fall and start in September and work for the next 5 years. The timing works out really well, because we have our RCPP that's ongoing right now. That'll be wrapping up by the time the sponsored project kicks in, and at the same time working with the Upper Cedar Watershed Management Authority. So really nice opportunity that came along, and so we threw our hat in the ring to see what we could get out of that. So. And I guess the only other thing I wanted to mention before we get into budget stuff is due to the weather, we've had various main breaks around town, so just keep you up to speed on that. We've had one on North Gilbert going up the hill there. I think we had a break. South Grand down by the Mid-American substation down there, we had a break, and then out on 13th Avenue out by Gendros as well, 12-inch line had a break.
Wow.
So there's the cold weather, the thaw, the frost going down it's causing us some problems. So and that's not all of them. Those are some of the main ones we've been dealing with. So that's all I have for tonight.
Go ahead,
Just
Dave.
real quick, I noticed something in the paper the other day with the county, with the law enforcement center, looking to go after their, funding fairly soon on that. It got me to thinking about the communications whole project there. I guess haven't heard anything about that for a while. Is that something we could talk about next week at our
Well, they had
workshop, and kind of get the rest of the council kind of brought up to speed on where that's all at?
Sure. The communications board met last Thursday, the 1st. There's a lot of discussion about, moving this dispatch center there was discussion, no action, and now they're having a follow-up meeting here this coming Monday, the way it looks. So by the time we get to workshop, we'll be able to probably inform you on what the discussion is up to date. But I guess, I don't know, Keith or Michael, if you guys have any comments.
I just think, it'd be nice to have the rest of the council kind of get brought up to speed on that. So.
Well, so the biggest thing is obviously they're wanting to with the new structure looking to take control and management, and I was highly quoted. I tend to talk a lot, so I was in the paper a lot on it, and simply asking this, if we were to go that route, show us the business plan and how you intend to manage this, so we can address that to the county residents. And that's supposed to be what we're waiting for to hear on, is what they're proposing on how they intend to manage it, and kind of go from that. Assuming what Monday the 12th, we're probably going to see that, and if the information is there, I imagine a vote will take place. If the information is not there, there'll either be another non-vote, or possibly at least two participants voting no without having the information to make a good decision on.
I mean, ultimately, whatever recommendation that the communication board gives, it'll then go back to the county. It'll then go back to the city, as we have a joint 28E in with that. So it'll then ultimately be, the vote will take place between the county and the city on how to pursue that 28E in the future, how it could change, how that would all kind of come together. So the communications board will be, they're seeking a recommendation just to, as kind of a best practice to kind of see which way it should, going forward is the feeling from that group. So ultimately we'll be reviewing that at some point, either one way or the other, I would suspect.
Yeah, I just was thinking it'd be good to get an update for the rest of the council on that. It's been quite a while since we've heard anything on it or talked about it, so.
Very good.
Any other questions for Steve? If not, any board or commission or committee reports? I guess we just kind of had a minor committee report there.
Sort of, absolutely. And I am, no, it's not really a board or commission. I'm going to be in Des Moines as kind of a byproduct of representing the Iowa League of Charles City for the Iowa League of Cities Legislative Day. I actually won't be there for that. I'll be there for the Iowa Association of Realtors event. However, I'm going to be pulling double duty and saving the entry fee for the city and still accomplish the same goal. So that'll be in Des Moines all day tomorrow.
Drive carefully.
If you can get there.
Yeah.
It's a big bus. We usually make it.
Very good. Any other committee or commission reports? If not, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned, and we will follow up with a work session.